Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. I hope you are all doing well, and I'm here to wrap up the month of June. And I have to say that June was overall a very good reading month. I didn't hate to read any book, and you're gonna see I put them in order, of course, from the least enjoyed one to the most enjoyable one, but I kind of struggled because a lot of them kind of fell in the category where I did have a good time while reading them. It was a very good reading month. I enjoyed my time while reading all of them pretty much. However, I do have a DNF, and I'm gonna start with a very unpopular opinion, because this series has kind of seen the series popping up again on BookTube lately, and I had the second book, was part of my shelf in, I think, probably April, May, I don't remember. And so I wanted to continue on. The first book had been okay and was a 3.5, so I just wanted to continue on. But I actually ended up DNFing this book, and so that's why I need to mention it at the beginning, because it's not going to be in my rundown, basically. But also it must be said that I've included like the pages number that I've read, because I read half of it and it's a big chunk of a book, so I've included the 400 pages I've read before I put it down, because it wasn't for me. So sorry, please don't hate me, but this was The Wall of Storms. I DNF'd it. I'm gonna get rid of the series. I'm very sorry. This is a high fantasy, epic fantasy, and you just, in the first book, you basically have these war trying to dethrone the emperor that was subjugating the populations and so on, and it's a bit of a complex story in that sense. But what was the main issue with that? So I've read 400 pages of this, and you were like, why would you at that point just not finish it? I just realized that I don't have much time to read, guys. Like, I have a lot of things to do during the day, as many of us have. So I need to prioritize my time, and I was literally not interested. The writing is good. I think this reads like a bit of a legend rather than... I felt very detached from the characters, and I think it's because of the writing style. Said that he's a very good writer. It's just probably not my kind of writer. And I just couldn't care less about the characters. There was nothing wrong with them. I didn't dislike them. I just didn't care. And I thought this was bloody slow, and it's just the kind of fantasy that, because I didn't care about the characters, I couldn't put up with how slow it was. And I just didn't care about the events. I just didn't care about what was going to happen next. I was generally not curious to get to the end and find out what would happen, which is extremely sad in a sense. But I will have to say that this is a series that if it's ever adapted as a movie or TV show, will definitely go into that. I think it would work brilliantly visually. But I'm probably gonna spoil myself on how it ends if it ever happens, but I'm not that eager. Like, I put this down weeks ago and I didn't even care about finding out what happens in this book. So this needs to go to a house that can be very much loved too. And I think it's a very unpopular opinion, it's a very me opinion, so please don't, take this with a pinch of salt in a sense. A lot of people love this series, and there is a very good reason for it. There's nothing inherently wrong. It was just not for me, and I couldn't justify reading 900 pages of book of a story that I didn't care about ultimately. So of completed books, I've actually just read 8. I did dedicate a lot of time with manga and graphic novels this month, which I'm very happy about. I think I've found the right balance. But my TBR, I didn't catch up completely, as you could see. There are still books I need to read. I am currently reading The Rook, and I have even to touch Beast of Prey, Empire of the Vampire, and Death Watch. Didn't touch them at all. So I did not catch up in the month of June. However, I've read a lot. I've read 8 books that were on my TBR. So I think I had like 12, and now I have 4 that I still have to get around to, so that's not too bad. So at number 8 we have Gina D'Amico Croak, and this is the story of this girl. She is a bit of a troublemaker, and because of that she's sent to spend her summer with her uncle in a remote part of like the USA. So where apparently she's gonna go and help in farming, but when she goes there, she finds out that her uncle and the whole town is made of Grim Reapers, and she has the potential to become another one. So she's basically training and becoming a Grim Reaper during the summer. Now this is I really enjoyed the writing in itself. I thought it was very hilarious. There's a lot of banter between the characters. There is a lot of funny dialogues in it. And overall, the writing was pretty funny, so I had a few laughs. Yet, the world building was shit. I think, in a sense, this is a premise that sounds similar to Scythe, and Scythe just does the world building way better. Way better. It doesn't much make sense, a lot of the things that are in here, and they are poorly explained. The kind of vibe of, it gives the explanation and the characters were like, oh, okay, that's how it works. And I was like, are we just gonna supposed to accept this shitty explanation about a thing that doesn't really make sense? Like, you can have a fantasy world, like you can have a magic system or paranormal system or whatever it is that makes sense, and this didn't. And also, without getting any spoilers, but when you get to the end, you find out who the bad guy was in all of these, and I couldn't suspend belief that someone who was supposedly so intelligent would expect to do the thing that he did at the end, and then our main characters would react in any other way. Like, it wouldn't make sense that this villain makes up this plan, goes ahead with it, and then expects our main character to just go on its side, basically. And I don't think it's a spoiler at all. Like, it doesn't make any freaking sense. Like, if you do that, you should know what the consequences is. You should know that there's no freaking way around it. There is no freaking way that, you can just then bring the main characters to your side. Like, there is no turning back from such actions. So the fact that this villain was expecting such a thing, it, for me, was absolutely absurd. And also the end, you go from the parents having, a very strong opinion on what she can do with her future to then just change their mind after something tragic happens, and it's just like that tragic thing that happened would even probably push, in reality, the parents to be even more protected, and then just the reaction of them all of a sudden, it was such a twist and a turn of, the parents' characters that was presented to us so far. It was like, no, it just doesn't make sense. This is just done for convenience of, moving forward your plot, and I'm just not gonna continue on. I'm gonna get rid of these. Unfortunately, the writing was good, so hopefully she has written other stuff and I might check them out. This was just not my kind of YA fantasy, which was a bit typical. I did like the premise, I did like our main characters, but the way she moves forward the plot with convenient, shitty explanations of the magic system just wasn't good enough for me to just say, I will ever pick up the sequel. I think it's a trilogy. Well, not for me. For me, it's a standalone. That goes away. And number 7, we have the Stardust Thief, and this was a fairy tale edition. This is a YA fantasy. Basically, you follow this merchant. She has been dealing with relics that bring magic or bring luck and so forth. So she is the kind of merchant that she would deal with. And one day, for a series of events, she ends up saving the son of the Sultan, and basically the Sultan says, well, actually, technically speaking, you are an outlaw, but if you do this one mission for me and you retrieve something for me, I'm gonna kind of let you go, kind of close my eyes and pretend that you don't do anything illegal. And she kind of has to accept this deal, and I'm gonna keep the synopsis very vague because I don't want to give any spoilers. But, so this is the premise that we have. And I have to say, this is in 7th place, but technically speaking, this is a very good YA. I think, again, I do struggle with this target audience writing style, or like plot style in a sense. So this is a very personal opinion of why I ultimately didn't love this, but I did enjoy this. It wasn't a bad read at all. I think it had nice twists. It doesn't have any love in it, basically. So if you're bothered by that, this is basically without a subplot of romance as of now. Might be evil in the future. And I thought that the magic, the genes, because there are a lot of gene in this, it was a very fascinating thing to follow, because I'm not used to read books about genes. And genes, that's weird, plural. How do you say plural of gene? Genes? Well, anyway, and the setting, this oriental setting with these legends and stories, I think it's inspired by A Thousand Nights. There's some inspiration from that. Was very fascinating to follow. I might even continue on, probably on audio, probably won't purchase the other book, but I might continue on with the series, and I did overall like it. It was a 3.5 stars, but it's a solid one. Sorry guys, I had to move angle because I needed to charge my camera. Anyway, so at number 6 we have Miserere. Finally, I read it. This was also part of my fantasy TBR, in which I'm reading a book for each subgenre of fantasy. So I finally got around to read this. And this is a very weird story. It's, as of now, and probably will be forever, it's a standalone fantasy, high fantasy, I guess, with some elements, weird elements of modern world. Anyway, so this is basically the story of this man. He years ago had to decide between saving his lover or his sister, and because of a series of motivations that he had, he ends up saving his sister and damning his lover. And in this very complex world, he has now been basically taken prisoner by the sister, because the sister, it turns out, she's a bad guy, and he's been imprisoned in her house, and she wants to bring basically hell to this world, and he just wants to escape her. And one day something happens and he manages to escape, and he now wants to kind of redeem himself for that choice that he made years back, and he will do that supporting this kid who comes from our modern world. He's just been transported to this world, it's called, and he basically becomes her protector, and he kind of wants to redeem himself by helping this kid survive in this world to kind of make up for the mistakes he did before. And of course, you know, the sister is after him, and there is this threat of hell being unleashed on this world, and so forth. This is a very complex story, and I think initially this was on my TBR for the fantasy, for the paranormal, because this guy who makes all this mess, makes the wrong choices, he's an exorcist. So I think one thing with this book that must be said, this is a very complex world that, because of the length of this, couldn't be completely fleshed out. However, the plot in itself is very simple. And it's a weird combination of a very complex world with a very simple plot. And I was thrown back, in a sense, from these. Said that, I did enjoy this book overall. There were definitely things that I rolled my eyes to it, but I would have continued on with the series if there were other books, and I think they kind of warranted that. One thing that must be said, first of all, is that this is kind of, you know, they all say, oh, you know, all religions are accepted and all of them, but then I found it a bit funny how the whole system, the all political layers and political religions, whatever you want to call it, it's all based on Christianity. So this idea of hell and heaven, kind of find it a bit funny, if you want, that she goes out of her way to kind of make this world even more complex by mentioning all these other religions, and then, you know, making sure that we know that all religions are accepted, but then she makes the whole world, the whole plot around a, you know, Catholic. It's even not Christianity, it's a Catholic ideology, religious ideology. So that must be said. Also, I found a bit absurd that because of this girl that he becomes the mentor of, she comes from modern world. At one point, she has a cell phone with her, and this cell phone, she makes her whole rules that she can do with this phone in this fantastical world. And I found that was very disjointed. Like, I'm reading a high fantasy and then got cell phone thrown in, messages, and that didn't work out well for me. But apart from that, this is one of the coolest exorcism scenes that goes on for pages and pages I've ever seen. So freaking cool. And I think that made me enjoy the book overall. So I ended up giving 3.75, 4 stars to these, because that scene, that whole chapters and chapters of these exorcisms, they were so cool. So I think there were elements that kind of put me off, but there were like the simple plot and the characters and that scene. I think they had a lot of potential that could have been expanded if there were other books in the series, if it makes sense. But overall, I didn't have a bad time. I just had some critiques. But it's a weird one, and you might want to make your mind on it, in a sense. But it's not your typical high fantasy. It's a very simple plot in that sense. So I'm a bit conflicted. Would I suggest these? I don't know.
A few moments later.
So my camera have decided that we're gonna do this on the floor for the rest of the video. But anyway, my bookshelves are still behind me. At number 5, I've got Gallant. Gallant is the new, I don't know if it's middle grade by V. Schwab. It's basically like a gothic story. And this is about this young girl. She's raised in this kind of school for children that are unwanted, abandoned. And one day though, she finds out that she does have some family, and she's receiving a letter just saying, you know, come to the house, you're welcomed here. Well, however, when she goes there, she finds out that whoever wrote the letter has passed away, and actually the family members in the house do not want her. And there is a very good reasons why they don't want her. There is a big kind of prophecy, mystery around the family, and now she's stuck there. She can't go back to the school, so she has to put up with the members of the family that don't like her, and also unravel the mystery of the family. Definitely a gothic story, and I think the gothic vibes were definitely there. I did enjoy her writing as always. However, it didn't pay off in the end, and that's probably what's being critiqued the most that I've heard of, and it's definitely something I felt too. So I had to lower the end, rating the end, because the end felt very rushed. I listened to this on audiobook, so unfortunately I didn't read with illustration because I think the book has illustrations. However, I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't mind it at all. I think it was a nice audiobook, very short one. I just thought it needed more pages. I thought it could have gone on for longer and have a better ending, in my opinion. At number 4, we have A Skinful of Shadow, and these are beautiful pages, color pages. This is another one that's a bit complex to explain the plot. I would say that this is a new take, fresh take personally, of a possession story. So you got the main characters in this story, they all can be possessed by ghosts. And this is historical fiction also because it takes place when there is a civil war in England, and you follow your main protagonist. She is the illegitimate heir of this powerful family. If all the people in this family, at least the main ones, can be possessed by ghosts, and she is taken to the family home. But it's not a loving family. They have dark purposes for wanting her there. And it's her trying to survive a family, trying to survive, you know, the possessions that these ghosts try to possess her body, but also at the same time to deal with, you know, the civil war. I wasn't expecting anything from this because I had read another book, very popular book by her, and I really disliked the other book. So I went into this thinking I purchased it because of the color of the pages and thinking this is probably a DNF. And you know what? I actually enjoyed my time with this. It was fast-paced, definitely intriguing, the whole concept around possession and ghosts, and I think like it's a very much my cup of tea. I've realized I really liked that, and I was fascinated by the plot, and because things kept happening, it never dragged. Standalone, I enjoyed the writing, and I will keep this book, you know what? And I thought I'm gonna get rid of it for sure, I won't like it, and actually it turned out to be very good. We have City of Dusk. This was part of an adult book box I received from Fairy Loot, and I never had heard of these before, so I'm gonna try and give you a synopsis, but this is a bit of complex story to give a proper synopsis of. But basically, you got this high fantasy world where you follow 4 to 5 main characters. They all, each one more or less, belong to a family that's kind of a noble family in the kingdom. And all of these families have different powers according to the god that they descend from. So there are gods that now disappear from this world. There is a king, but these families, they are very high up in the ranking, political ranking, and they all have hair and the whole family system behind, and they all descend from the gods with different powers that have now disappeared. And the issue they have is that basically because the gods have disappeared, now this new recent heir of these families are, some of them, less powerful, and kind of the magic of the world is disappearing because the gods are not around anymore. And there is a lot of political intrigue in this, and some hair are more strong, some hair are less strong, but still they play important parts in this world. So it's a very complex layered of political intrigue, if you want. And I have to say that I'm a bit surprised I've not heard other people speaking of this, because yes, it has its upside down, but overall my enjoyment of this, my final rating and experience of this was very positive. I think what it does lack world building, because when you have such a complex world, you need to give me more, maybe in the next books. However, the writing was very good. the twists were very good. Like, they were honestly, generally, some of them very surprising. The characterizations was good. The way the plot develops was very good. Yes, it is a bit long, and I felt that in some small parts dragged a bit, but the end was very powerful ending. A lot of things came together, a lot of things happened, and I'm genuinely surprised I've not heard of this before. And I ended up giving this between 3.75, 4 stars. I will probably definitely continue on with the series. I think I've read this at the beginning of the month, and the characters and the story still stuck with me. It does lack, though, a bit of the brutality, the adult fantasy that I tend to enjoy have. I think it tends to try and goes there, and then it kind of backtracks and just say, oh no, things are solved, or that brutal thing didn't happen. And if she was to make that brutal thing happen, I think this would have a more powerful impact on the reader. So it does feel like it's a YA author attempting an adult book and trying testing the terrain, if it makes sense. So hopefully she will go full on in the following books. But overall, I would suggest this if you like high fantasy. I think it should be on your radar. And it's a complex world, but the way she's written it, it's pretty clear. So I didn't struggle with following it. I just think that we need more. And then number 2, I've got another unpopular opinion, but this time twisted around. This time, this is a book I have received a lot of hate, and I actually enjoyed it. This is The Book of Night by Holly Black. This is, and again, a book that I received in the adult book box from Fairy Loot. So it has stunning and papers. So I really enjoyed these. And this is part of a series, first of all. I thought it was a standalone, but it isn't. And it's the story of this girl, Charlie. Charlie, she's been a bit of a crook all her life. She used to steal stuff, and now she's kind of retired. Just said, after something happened that we didn't know at the beginning, she just said, I'm just gonna be a bartender. I'm just not gonna meddle into those things anymore until a job she can say no to is offered to her. Now, this got a lot of hate, and I can imagine, because I think the magic system, it's just not that interesting. It's a whole thing about shadows, and I think it's definitely considered as a low fantasy, and it has to do with shadow magic, and it's not well done, it's not well explained, it's not very fascinating. However, it gets better in the second half when I started to understand what was going on, and I guessed one twist, which is the biggest twist, but me guessing it didn't take away the fact that I was fascinated to see how it would play out. And I think it played out well in the end, and that's why I enjoyed this. It's a very fresh read because I just finished a couple of days ago. But overall, well, I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed that we follow this kind of a likable character, that she is very unapologetically so. She is just, I am a crook, I am, I steal stuff, I'm not a good girl, and I really liked her attitude. And I think she was very human with her inner conflict about who she was supposed to be, who she would like to be, but ultimately she inherently was. She's going on this journey, and I really enjoyed that. But also I really enjoyed the, I don't know, it's a male character, male interest, what you call it. I really enjoyed him. The guy, if you've read this, you know who I mean. I enjoyed his plot, and I was fascinated by their relationship, and I will definitely continue on. Yes, I really hope that she gets better in terms of her world building. I really hope that she dedicates more time to, just make the story a bit more layered than it is at the moment. But I'm curious. So all the other books I mentioned, I think they were all in the 3.75 to 4 stars, and I did overall, as I said, have a good time. They just probably won't reach, the end of the year best books for sure, but they were entertaining throughout. However, the book I've really enjoyed this month, and the book that probably stuck with me the most and will stick with me the most, I really had a good time, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was a bit hesitant, was An Eye Darken. This has been on my TBR for a couple of months now, and this is a YA historical fiction. It's kind of very sold this to me as Vlad Tepes, inspiration from you know, the character of Dracula. Vlad Tepes, but she's a girl. And this is slightly wrong in the sense that, yes, she is the daughter of Vlad Tepes, and she's a good heir of Vlad Tepes in that sense, but it's not Vlad Tepes reimagined. It's the story of, you know, the son and daughter of Vlad Tepes. So the premise of this is that you got, well, daughter and son, Vlad Tepes, they are given to the Ottoman Empire when they are children, kind of like a hostage situation. They used to do that in historical times, where basically, you know, you would send your children, so the children of the ruling family, to the other kingdom just to make sure that the peace is maintained, and if something happens, then the children would be killed off. So they were literally hostages. So you follow our main character and her brother, who's born a couple of years after her, and while she's very vicious, she is definitely, you know, the true heir of Vlad Tepes in that sense. He's a very delicate, kind boy, and you see them growing up with the heir of the Ottoman Empire, and you see then in their early adulthood what happens and all the political intrigue and all of that. So this is not a fantasy at all, and I think that's another thing that I've heard people being bothered by, because this is not fantasy. There's no fantastical element. It's a kind of alternative history, historical fiction if you want. This was so good. Especially by the time it came out, in the kind of climate that came out, where we had all of a kind of YA fantasy. This is completely different in a sense. You follow a character, you know, our main characters. You kind of follow both, to be fair. You follow both her and the brother almost equally. And you've got these very different siblings growing up in the same environment, but then taking the same environment and adjusting to the environment in a very different way. So you grow up with them and you get to see them become adults, or like young adults, with all their good side, with all their miscommunications, if you want, with all their viciousness, with all their petty jealousies, but also with, you know, their kindness to each other, with their love with each other, and these other boys, the heir of the Ottoman Empire as well. And because of the time that we're spending with them as children, when we get to the point where, you know, actual things happen and we get their stream of consciousness, it's so well done that all of what they do makes sense. So the characterization is extremely well done, because then when things happen, we understand why. We understand why the choices are made, why they think that way, why they act that way. And I really loved that. I thought it was such a fresh take of a YA. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of YA anymore. However, this is definitely a gem in the genre, in my opinion, because of the way it's done. It was fast-paced, full of events. Despite us following them as children, it always stayed interesting. And it's a trilogy that I purchase the other books immediately after finishing this, because I need to know what happens. And these characters, both of them, but especially her, just sipped under my skin a lot. I really enjoyed her. This kind of morally great character that makes a lot of sense, like her rawness, her desire of, you know, vengeance, her viciousness in a sense is something that I don't know, I could relate a lot. Not relate because I am like her, but because there's a part of me that wish to be like her more, in a sense. She's kind of calling out a dark side of myself, if you want. She's just kind of a representation of that darker side, where, you know, she does want justice and she just doesn't care how she's getting it. She just needs to go there. She will employ every mean to get it done, and I really enjoy that as a character. It's a very brutal, considering that it's a YA, and there are no tropes inside that I could find, which I really loved. The romance inside, it's layered. It's not a romance story to make you fall in love. It's something that generally it makes you feel all the the good and the bad, and it does make a lot of sense of how it develops this romance, and everything just makes a lot of sense. I am absolutely in awe in front of these. And now my knees are abandoning me. I've spoken a lot, so I'm gonna go because my voice is gone. I don't know why, I got a bit of a cold. But let me know what was your favorite read of June, and I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Ciao!